the Canadian, and I am going to hopefully teach you a little bit about tools this morning. It's a little bit of an obscure topic. I'm sure people will be interested, but I'm going to talk about all of the things that we use as human beings to make our lives better. I'll talk mostly about workshop tools, but I also want to make sure that I talk about the people who use those tools. Let me just make sure the live stream is working. It's a little bit out. There I am on my screen, so it looks like things are going well. I am so happy to be back doing a live stream again. It's been a few weeks. I had a nice break from doing live lessons. I love doing them, but they do take up a great deal of time for me. So I have finished my first week of school. I actually don't have a school day today. I don't have to teach lessons. But this past Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, or Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, it's been a busy week. I was busy teaching in my regular classroom. So I'm really happy to be here. I just want to say hi to all of the familiar faces in the chat. So many of you have been watching and are loyal English learners. So anyways, welcome to this English lesson on tools. I'm going to get started with, of course, the most important thing you should have if you have tools, and that is a toolbox. I'm not sure what it's like in the rest of the world, but in Canada, many people have a red toolbox. There are different colors, but it's nice to have a toolbox so that you have a place to store all of your tools. So instead of starting by talking about tools, I thought I would talk about the place where you keep them. So many people have a red toolbox. I'm sure Sean from Free 99 English has a red toolbox in his garage. I think almost everyone has a red toolbox somewhere. Anyways, that's not an English word. If you have questions, Todd is here and he will be posting a link in the chat. I will try to pause every once in a while and answer them. For those of you just joining us as I see the numbers go up, we are talking about tools today in this English lesson. I'm going to go over the names, the use, and talk a little bit about the people who use them. So again, Sean says he does have a red toolbox. I thought he would. I think I have two red toolboxes. So our first tool is the hammer. So believe it or not, this picture is one I found on the internet, but I actually have this exact hammer at home. A hammer is used to pound in nails or to hammer in nails. So you can use hammer to describe the tool. So I have a hammer, but you can hammer in nails. So you can use it to describe the action as well. This end is used to hammer in nails, but it also has a claw on the back that you can use to pull nails back out again, because sometimes the nails, some of these nails are bent, sometimes the nails don't go in well. So a hammer is used by construction workers or carpenters. If you watched the lesson earlier, a few months ago, I did a lesson on jobs. And in that, I went over some of the jobs that people do. And a carpenter or a construction worker would use a hammer. It has another meaning as well, a little bit of a slang meaning. And that's if you drink too much alcohol, we sometimes say that a drunk person, we say that they are hammered. So that's just a little bit of extra vocabulary for you. But this is our first tool, the hammer. If that hammer doesn't do the job, there's kind of a little joke in English. We say, you need a bigger hammer. So a bigger hammer would be a sledgehammer. So you can see that this hammer has a large head on it, and a sledgehammer weighs a lot and is useful for putting in posts in the ground or other things where you need something that's just a little bit heavier. So if your small hammer isn't big enough, a sledgehammer is a great one. This is a little hard to pronounce for English learners, sledgehammer, sledgehammer. So the D doesn't make the D sound. It makes a sledgehammer. And there you go. If that doesn't work, you can always use a jackhammer. Many of you live in cities, and when road crews work on the roads, you will often hear a sledgehammer. It has a very, very distinct sound. So when a sledgehammer goes, it's like, durr, durr. Bob the Canadian's not good at imitating a sledgehammer, but a sledgehammer is used by someone who needs to break up concrete or break up the road so that they can create a new road or a new surface. So a jackhammer, did I just say sledgehammer? A jackhammer is used to do that. I'm just gonna pause for a moment to welcome everyone. We are here doing an English lesson on tools. Thank you so much to all of you who came early. I have to start the live lessons on Fridays at 7:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time now, so hopefully that's not too early for you. It's a little bit early for me, but in order to do a full 45-minute to an hour live lesson, I need to start a bit earlier. So I got up a bit earlier. Can you tell as I make small mistakes that I got up a bit earlier? So our next, oh wait, I should check if there are questions. I'm sure there are. Let's see. So the first one is from Renata Muyami. Let me get that posted in. Renata says, how come you say when somebody is hammered? Or how come sometimes you say someone is hammered? So that would be the correct way to ask the question. How come sometimes we use the word hammered to describe someone who's drunk? I'm not sure, but if someone's hammered, it usually means they have had too much to drink, and I'm talking about alcohol. Next question here, let's see. Saeed is pointing out, yes. Saeed says, I thought your live starts 30 minutes later. So Saeed, in order for me to get in a full lesson, I need to start at 7:30 now. My work day starts a little bit earlier than it did last school year. I teach right away in the morning. So in order to do this lesson, I need to start a little bit earlier. Hopefully that works out for all of you. Let me see. So I have, that is all the questions. That's great. So the next tool is a saw. This we would call a hand saw. It's used by hand. Obviously it is not plugged in, and you go like this in order to cut wood. So this guy is probably a carpenter. You can see that he's wearing a hard hat. So on construction sites in Canada, you need to wear safety equipment. So he is wearing a hard hat. And he is using a saw or hand saw to cut some wood. We don't often use a hand saw though. We are more likely to use a power saw or a circular saw or a skill saw. But a power saw is one that you plug in. The blade on the saw turns around. There's a button here to activate the power saw or the saw, and you would use this to cut wood as well. This is the most common saw. By the way, if you want to know a little bit more about me, when I was younger, I was a construction worker in the summer between my university years. So I would go to university for 9 months, and then I would work for my uncle doing construction for 3 months, and I helped him build houses. So I've used a lot of these tools. I've gotten a lot of splinters from wood. A wood splinter is when you get a little piece of wood that goes in your skin. But for many, many summers, 6 summers total, I was a construction worker, and I really liked it. It was super fun. Just want to say hello again to everyone who is here. And I'm just going to click here. It looks like, are there subtitles while I do the live stream now? I see subtitles on the screen. I didn't know that. You can turn them on. Apparently there might be subtitles as I do the live stream now. Here we have a hacksaw. A hacksaw is a slightly smaller saw, and the blade has more teeth on it, and it is used to cut pipe. Usually a hacksaw is used by a plumber. So a plumber is someone who fixes the pipes in your home. A plumber is really good at making taps and sinks and all of that plumbing type stuff work well. So they usually use a hacksaw to cut pipes. The next saw is fairly common in Canada. It is a chainsaw. So here you see someone who is using a chainsaw to cut a log. We use chainsaws to chop down trees and to chop up wood after we chop the tree down, sometimes for firewood or sometimes to build our homes. In Canada, most of the, yeah, thanks Todd, it's auto-generated subtitles. I think that might be new. I'm not sure, are they like right on track? See someone who is using a chainsaw to cut a log. Yeah, they're a little behind. Sorry, I'm distracted by the subtitles. Anyways, a chainsaw is used by a forester or someone who works in the forest industry, the forestry industry, to cut down trees. Our next tool is a tape measure. You can see that it is used to measure the length of things, or we also call it a measuring tape. So I might say to my wife, Jen, hey, do you have a tape measure? I need to go measure something. Or I could say, hey, do you know where the measuring tape is? I need to go measure something. So in Canada, the measuring tapes or tape measures often have centimeters on them and meters, but sometimes they also have inches and feet on them, or imperial measurement, because we live close to the United States. So in Canada, we use the metric system for measuring things, but in our building industry, we still use feet and inches because I think because we live close to the United States, and that industry hasn't changed very quickly. So most Canadians are bilingual when they're measuring things. For instance, I am 5'10.5" tall, and I don't know how tall I am in meters. That's kind of odd, isn't it? Considering I live in a country where we do that. Let's see here. A few questions coming up. I'm going to answer a few. Jordan says, how do we describe the action of putting a nail in wood? So we would say that you are hammering in a nail or you are pounding in a nail. If you take the nail out, you would say you are pulling the nail out. There's actually a tool called a nail puller. I don't have a picture of it. Next question. We have from Dmitrio from the Ukraine, is sawyer someone who uses a saw to cut wood? So we don't use that word sawyer in our regular language anymore. So when someone is cutting wood, we just say that they are sawing wood. We don't really, it's an older word. So we would just say the guy who's cutting the wood. Let's see. Suhana says, let me get this question in here. Could you please give a sentence example of hammer as a verb, to hammer? So I would say the other day I hammered in 5 nails, or right now I am hammering in some nails. That's how I would do that. Suhana. Let's see here. Eder says, hard hat, could it also be called a helmet? We generally don't call a hard hat a helmet. So in the picture where I showed the man with the hard hat, let me find that back quickly. So we would call this a hard hat. We would not call it a helmet, okay? A helmet would be something that in Canada, a helmet is something you wear when you go, when you ride a motorcycle, when you go skiing, but generally on a construction site. There's a fly behind me, apparently. On a construction site, you would wear a hard hat. Next question. Dorota says, let me paste that in here. Could you please compare pronunciation of saw versus saw? Oh, they are pronounced the same. So on the way to work, I saw a dog. Yesterday, or right now, I'm going to saw this piece of wood, okay? Or I'm going to use a saw. So saw is the same pronunciation all the time. Let's see here. Andre has one, and then I'll keep moving on. Andre says, "Hi Bob, I remember when the only meaning I knew for nail was the part of the body. Yes, you have fingernails. So imagine how ridiculous I found the phrase, 'on a bed of nails she makes me wait.'" Yeah, is that from a U2? I think that's from a U2 song. A U2 song, I think. So yes, these are fingernails, but we also call them our nails. But the little steel or metal things that you put in with a hammer are also called a nail. Let's keep going. I just want to say hi to everyone in the chat again. We're at 382 people. Always a surprise for me. We have things that are called nails, but we also have screws. A screw is something that you put into something with a screwdriver. So a screwdriver looks like this. It has a handle, and there are different kinds of screwdrivers. This is a Phillips screwdriver. In Canada, we also have Robertson screwdrivers. We have flathead screwdrivers. But a screwdriver is used to put in screws or to take out screws. These are very common all over the world, probably as common as a hammer, I would think. The next tool is a wrench. So a screwdriver is used for screws. You know what screws are, right? They're these little things, and they have like a spiral around them, and you can turn them into wood. A wrench is used to tighten or loosen bolts and nuts. And I don't have a picture of bolts and nuts, but the bolt is the long part, and the nut goes on to the end. And in order to tighten them, you would use a wrench. Wrenches come in different sizes. And again, in Canada, we have wrenches that are in imperial measurement. So I can use a 1/2-inch wrench. We also have wrenches that are metric. So I could use a 11mm wrench to tighten things. So depending on where the equipment came from that I have to put a bolt into, I need to decide which kind of wrench to use. So a wrench, sometimes they're open-ended, sometimes they're closed, but these are wrenches. This is what we call a pipe wrench in Canada. It has different names around the world, but a pipe wrench is a pretty easy to recognize tool. It is adjustable. If you turn this part here, it opens and closes. And it's self-tightening when you put it onto a pipe. A pipe wrench will grip the pipe so that you can turn it or hold it. If you need to pry something, you would use a crowbar. So the verb to pry, I'll give you a demonstration. Like if you put something in and then you go like that, you're prying. So a crowbar is a tool that you use to pry. It has two ends. This end is actually very similar to the claw on a hammer, and you can actually use this to pull out nails. And this end you can use to pry things apart. So sometimes when you are taking something apart, a crowbar is a very handy tool to have, used again by construction workers, etc. Believe it or not, at my high school where I work, we have a set of bolt cutters. Bolt cutters are really, really strong cutters that you go like this, and then you can cut things. We use these to remove locks from students' lockers sometimes. So a bolt cutter is really good if a student puts a different lock on a locker, or if we can't get into a locker because the student has left our school and we don't have the combination, we will use this. But this is a really strong cutting tool that you can use to cut bolts. I should do some questions. I'm a little off my game here. When you're off your game in English, you're not used to doing something again. So let me see here. Henry from Taiwan says, hi Bob, do you have a preferred brand of tools? So when I buy power tools, I like to buy DeWalt tools. So that's a brand name. When I buy wrenches and things, I like to buy Benchmark from the local hardware store. So I have a few that I like. Sarah Sifo says, what is the name of the tool used for squeezing garlic? So that's a kitchen tool, and it's called a garlic press. So you put the garlic in and then you squeeze it, and the garlic comes out in small pieces. Let's see here. Dimitro says, from the Ukraine, some guys outdoors cutting a tree with a chainsaw. We hear chainsaws a lot in Canada. In my part of Canada, people are usually cutting firewood throughout the year and storing it for winter. So a chainsaw is a pretty common thing to hear. It has a very distinctive sound. Ajne, hi Ajne, hope you're having a good day. Thanks for being here. Can we call a first aid kit a toolbox? You could. I don't know if we would. We usually just call it a first aid kit, especially because it's something that you want to be easy to recognize. So first aid kit's usually white with a big red cross on it. You could say it's a toolbox. It looks like one, but we often just call it a first aid kit. Indian says, we also call a wrench a spanner. So I think in the UK and other parts of the world, a wrench, I think I lost my page of the wrench. Where did that go? Right here. A wrench can also be called a spanner. So thank you. That's great. Oh yeah, Sean says, chainsaws are as common as songbirds. Yeah, chainsaws in Canada are pretty common. In fact, people carve things with chainsaws. They do sculptures with chainsaws. It's really cool. How High says, what's the name of the machine that we use to raise a house up? I'm not sure exactly what machine. There are a lot of pieces of equipment. So when we use something that has a motor or engine, we usually don't call it a tool, we call it equipment. But I think you might be talking about a crane. So a crane is something where there's a big hook and they can lift things up and then set them down again. So I think you're talking about a crane. Let me get the next question and then we will move on. Let's see here. Vinicius says, hi Bob, good to see you again. You too, thanks for being here. You showed us two types of wrenches. Is there any specific name for them? So I'm not a tool expert, but we would call this an open-ended wrench, and we would call this, I think it might be a box wrench, but don't quote me on it. I could be wrong. But generally in Canada, the wrench has an open end at one end and has a closed end at the other. That's how all of my wrenches look. So you have both options. Let's see here. Saeed says, Bob, could you please tell me about the phrase screwed up? So we looked at a screwdriver as a tool, and it is used to put in screws. But if you know someone who maybe they dropped out of college and they don't have a job, you could say that their life is screwed up. And that just means that their life is a mess. It means that things aren't going well for them. You could also say that like maybe you have a computer and it's not working right. You could say, my computer's all screwed up. It's not doing what it's supposed to do. So let's see here. Fernando says, good morning, Bob. How are you? I'm good, Fernando. I hope you are good too. Could you please tell me the difference between meters and feet? So in the metric system, we measure in centimeters and meters. In what we call the imperial system, or I guess it's British measurement, you measure in feet. So 30 centimeters is 12 inches, and 12 inches is a foot. I'm not really good at explaining this, but there are two systems of measurement, Fernando, and in Canada we use both of them. Let's see here. Last question, we'll move on. Andy Wong says, could you please explain the lifting jack? So a jack is a tool that you put under a car and then you go like this and it slowly goes up and it lifts the car. I don't have a picture of one, sorry. If you make things out of wood, one sec, I'm gonna cough. Excuse me, I'm still here. See, I'm still here. Just getting a drink. If you make things out of wood, you might have seen this. This is a clamp. In particular, this is a C clamp. So carpenters often use clamps because you can turn the clamp and tighten it. So when you glue two pieces of wood together, you'll often put a clamp on it in order to hold the wood together. So again, this is a C clamp. You can see that it looks like the letter C. And this is something that you would use to clamp things together. If you are someone who welds steel together, so when you are a welder, you know how it makes a bright flash? It's like zzz, zzz, and it's really bright, and you have to wear a welding helmet. You also will use a clamp to hold things together. Do you know, I thought the topic of tools would not be a popular topic, but there are 426 people watching right now. Thank you so much for being here. This is awesome. I'm just going to keep going and keep talking about tools, and hopefully it helps you as you learn English. Remember, you can come back and watch again tomorrow with subtitles on if there are any parts of this lesson, this English lesson, that you didn't understand. And also, don't forget, if you're new here, there is a subscribe button, and if you are enjoying this lesson and you give me a thumbs up, it makes me happy. This is a utility knife. When I was a construction worker, I had a tool belt that I wore on my waist where I kept my hammer, and I also had a utility knife. With this knife, there's a button here, so the blade of the knife can slide in and out. And also inside the knife are extra blades. A utility knife is very, very handy when you are doing any sort of construction projects. If you ever need to, cut something open or shave something off, you can use a utility knife. I should have talked about this right away. Whenever you do any kind of work that might be dangerous, you should wear safety glasses. In Canada, you are required to wear safety glasses, a hard hat, and safety boots when you are on a construction site or what we call a job site. These are safety goggles, actually, and these are safety glasses. So there's two kinds. We in Canada are very, very concerned about safety, and we like construction workers and people who use tools to always be safe. So safety glasses, hard hat, and work boots. I wish I had a picture of work boots. When you wear work boots, you can step on like pointy things and it doesn't go through the boot. So safety boots are very important. In fact, I'm not sure if Sean from Free 99 English has ever worked somewhere where you need safety boots, but I bet you he has a pair. Almost everyone in Canada has a pair of safety boots somewhere because you can't work in a factory or on a job site or in construction unless you wear them. When you build things, you want things to be square, and so we actually have something called a square. And what this is it is a 90-degree angle. It is a perfect 90-degree angle, and you would use this when you are cutting wood. You would use this to make a line on the wood so that you cut the wood at a perfect 90-degree angle. It's very important when you build things out of wood and steel that things are straight and things are square. So we use a square for that. Kara says, do dental doctors use safety glasses? Actually, in Canada, when you go to the dentist, they give you glasses to wear when you're having your teeth worked on. These are pliers. In fact, these are called needle nose pliers. I should put that in the chat. Needle nose pliers. Sean says, everywhere I worked, I required safety boots. I have pairs I have never worn because yearly boot allowance from work. So yes, there are many places in Canada where they actually give you money to buy safety boots so that you have safety boots. Pliers. So pliers, obviously they go in and out. They're used to squeeze things or to grab small things. It's a nice thing to have in your toolbox. We looked at wrenches. There are also tools called ratchets. So this is a ratchet and this is a socket. You can take the socket off and put a different size socket on. A ratchet allows you to tighten a bolt or a nut in one direction, and then you can change the direction to loosen it. and it is a very handy tool. I won't explain exactly how it works. I'm sure many of you have a ratchet in your toolbox and you maybe just didn't know the English name, but that is a ratchet. Let me just check for a few more questions here. Let's see here. Renata. Oh, I had that one already. Oh yeah, this is good. So Renata Mayumi says, do they use a crowbar for breaking and entering into a car in movies? So oftentimes a crowbar is a tool that thieves will use when they break into a car or a house. So it is a very common tool used for illegal things, for crime as well. So yes, definitely. Let's see here. Hugo says, hi Bob, I'm Hugo from Indonesia. Could you use some idioms that use tools in the words? Thank you. I will maybe do some at the end, but I think I'm going to run out of time for that, Hugo. Sorry. Eder says, are tool and toll pronounced the same? No. So you use tools to build things. I have. So this is a tool. But when you drive on a road where they charge you money, you pay a toll. Okay, so this topic today is tools. And when you go on a highway, sometimes you pay a toll. Tool, toll. I hope you can hear the difference there. Let's see here. Manny says, what's the difference between screw, bolt, and stud? Okay, so a screw has a sharp point on the end, so you can just push it against some wood and it can start to get turned in with a screwdriver. A bolt is the same size all the way along, and you have to put it in a hole and then you put a nut on the other end, okay? And a stud is a bolt and a stud are the same, but a stud is what holds a tire on a car, okay? So hopefully that's a good explanation for you. Let's see here. Demetrio says, what's the difference between a spade and a shovel? Are they any different or just synonyms? So PS 5 foot 10 inches and a half is 179 centimeters. Thanks, Demetrio. I'm 179 centimeters tall. So a spade has a sharp point and a shovel sometimes is square. And a spade is a shovel that you use to dig into the ground, whereas a normal shovel that has kind of a square end you can use to shovel snow or dirt or gravel. So a spade is a particular kind of shovel that you can use to dig into the ground. If you're wondering what I'm doing, I'm looking for my picture of it. So here is a shovel, but we would call this particular shovel a spade because it's pointed and there's spots for you to put your feet to push it down to go into the ground. Let's keep moving here. This is a chisel. A chisel is used to take little pieces out of wood. Sometimes you just push it. Sometimes you hit a chisel with a hammer. If you don't have a chainsaw, you can use an axe. And we have two spellings in English. Both are correct. I generally use this spelling, but an axe is something that you use to chop down a tree or to chop up wood. You also use an axe to split firewood. I don't know if you've ever seen that. Sometimes you use a square, but sometimes you use a level. Let's see. So this is something that there's a bubble in the level, a little bubble of air. And when you put a level on a surface, I'm going to try to put it here. See, if it's tilted this way, the bubble goes one way. If it's tilted this way, it goes the other. But if you have it just perfect, the bubble sits in the middle, and then you can tell if something is level. So in Canada and around the world, construction workers are always trying to build things level. And if they put two things together, they want them to be square. This is a drill. It's actually a cordless drill. It has a battery pack here. This person is using the drill to put screws into something. We often use a cordless drill instead of a screwdriver now because it's just a little easier. You can also use a drill to drill a hole. You would put a bit a drill bit into the drill, and you would use it to drill a hole. So you can use a drill or cordless drill either to put in screws or to drill a hole. This is a jigsaw. This is one of my favorite kinds of saws because it's very, very easy to use. The jigsaw blade goes up and down. So notice all saws have blades. Even if the blade is round, we still call it a blade. And a jigsaw has a blade that goes up and down. If you want wood, just a sec here. I'm just gonna remove something from the chat. There we go. If you want wood to be smooth, you would use a sander. So a sander is something that has sandpaper at the bottom, and it moves back and forth really, really quickly. So a sander is something that you would use to smooth out wood. A ladder is something that you use to climb up to a certain area. So a ladder has rungs. Let me put that in the chat here. It has rungs. And you can use that to climb up somewhere high. This is actually called an extension ladder. And this is called a step ladder. So a step ladder is different because it has two sides and it sits by itself. You don't have to lean a step ladder up against something, but you have steps on this side. Usually it says here, this is not a step because they don't want you to stand on the very top, but this is a step ladder. If you work in a shop or a workshop, you might have a vise. So a vise, this opens and closes when you turn this part, and it's really helpful for holding things. So this is a vise. I'm just gonna read the chat for a sec here. Jigsaw is a better. It would be better for you sat in a chair on your farm. Anyway, I appreciate your job. Thank you very much. Okay, Another tool is an anvil. So an anvil is a really large, heavy tool that you would use. Sometimes you would put something on the anvil and then you would hit it with a hammer to flatten it. If you need to move things, you would use a wheelbarrow. So a wheelbarrow, I think everyone in the world knows what a wheelbarrow is. It has a small wheel on the front, it has handles on the back, and then a spot where you can put things. A wheelbarrow is very, very handy for moving lots of stuff that's heavy. So instead of carrying it, you can push it around, and it's very, very helpful. Let me see here. Let me do a few more questions. Let's see here. Madi says, I can see you with subtitles now. Yeah, it's interesting. It's kind of cool that there are subtitles. Is very, very handy. Yeah, live subtitles. It makes my lessons hopefully even easier to understand. Let's see here. Nathan GR says, let me put this in here. Good afternoon from Greece, Teacher Bob. Hello, Nathan. The tool clamp, is it similar to the tool vice grip? Thank you in advance. So a vice grip is a type of pliers. You'll have to search Google Images. A vice grip is a very handy tool. It's actually called a locking plier. So when you put it on something, it locks shut until you need to pop it back off. So you'll have to look up what a vice grip is. Let's see here. So Sophie says, what's the difference between leverage or a lever and a crowbar? So a crowbar is something that you can use as a lever. So you can pry something with a crowbar. I'm trying to make the pry action here. Peter, the lesson today will be 45 minutes long. We'll be done in about 5 minutes. I just saw that question in the chat. Kane says, in what places do they spell axe without the E? I'm not sure. I've seen it both ways. I've read stories and I've read books where axe has an E and where axe doesn't. For me, I usually spell it with an E, and you can safely spell it either way. Let's see here. Saeed says, hello, Bob. Good morning, sir. I wasn't expecting your live now. I thought you were going to start at 8 as usual. I'm very, very sorry, Saeed. I did start this morning at 7:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, and I will be starting at 7:30 each week now. So it is going to be a half an hour earlier than normal each week. So hopefully that works for everyone. And hopefully we can all still get together for an English lesson at that time each week. Let's see here. Tina says, could you tell me please how you would call a multifunctional tool like a Swiss Army knife? So there is something called a Swiss Army knife, and it's a small knife that has a screwdriver and a knife blade and a little corkscrew. It has a whole bunch of tools in it. We also have something called a multi-tool. A multi-tool is something that it's bigger than a Swiss Army knife, and it has several different tools in it. Let's see here. Oh, yeah, this is a good one. Mojtaba says, hi, Bob. What does it mean to work your way up the career ladder? So if you start a job and you're what we would call the low man, you're the low man on the totem pole, and then if you work really hard, maybe you'll get a promotion, and then you'll be a manager, and maybe you'll get another promotion, and you'll be on the board of directors. So you can work your way up the career ladder. So it's like there's a ladder, and every rung is a promotion at work. I hope that made sense. Let's see here. Andre says, I just learned a new word, ratchet, but believe me, now that I think twice for not saying hatchet instead. So a hatchet is a small axe, and a ratchet is used to put in a bolt or to loosen a bolt or nut. So yes, don't get them confused. If you need a ratchet, you'll want to make sure you get a ratchet. If you need a hatchet, you'll need to get a hatchet. Let me see here. Obviously, sometimes you need to paint things, and you will need a paintbrush. So here is a paintbrush that would be used for painting a wall, or maybe you're just painting something outside. Maybe you're painting your wheelbarrow. But usually in Canada, when we paint in a house, we use a paint roller. It's just quicker to roll paint on the wall. So a paintbrush is good for doing the corners in a room, and then a paint roller is good for doing the rest of the walls. We have a few tools that we use outside. This is a rake, and this is a rake, but we call it a fan rake or a leaf rake. You can actually see this person is raking leaves. In Canada, usually everyone owns both. This is a garden rake, or this is used for leveling out dirt or leveling out stone. And then this is a fan rake, which you would use to clean up leaves. Many people in Canada have a fan rake because many of us rake leaves in the fall. So let's see here. We have an off-topic question, but I'm going to take it. Sean from Free 99 says, how was your first week back at school? So as you know, I am back at school. I am teaching full-time again. I have 3 classes this semester. I am teaching French, computer studies, and French. And it was a good week. My classes are really, really big, but not as big as this, because there's 441 people who are watching right now. So that is really cool. Anyways, for your information, my plan is to do a 45-minute lesson on Fridays. So this lesson is almost over. I want to thank you for watching. I was doing 1-hour lessons, but I don't have time for that. So going forward, this is the schedule for my YouTube channel. There will be a new video on Tuesdays. There will be a live lesson on Friday mornings at 7:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. I think that's 11:30 a.m. Greenwich Mean Time, GMT. There will be a lesson tomorrow night as well from the farm. It will be open topic. That will now be at 7 p.m. So 15 minutes earlier than normal. So 7 p.m. And I will try to do that lesson for 1 hour. And that will be the plan. Your job is to, if you watch the lesson, if there are any parts that you didn't understand, you can re-watch that part with subtitles on. It looks like subtitles are happening now, but you might have to wait till tomorrow to re-watch parts of the video. And it isn't a bad idea. I'm not trying, someone once said, I'm trying to get more views on my YouTube channel. I'm not. When you are learning a language, it's good to space out your learning. So it is a good idea to re-watch parts of this video tomorrow with subtitles on, and then maybe watch some little parts of it with subtitles off. It's really good for training your ear. So when I do this, training your ear, do you know if I do this, it means crazy? I should just point to my ear instead of saying that. So anyways, again, tomorrow night, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, I will be live from the farm. I hope to see some of you there. It will be an open topic discussion. You can ask anything you want and I will try to explain it. But I'm Bob the Canadian. If you haven't subscribed yet, there's a button down there that you can use to subscribe. If you want to give me a thumbs up, that would be awesome. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you have an awesome weekend. I am at work today, but it is a non-teaching day. The students are not here today, so I'm going to enjoy my day and I'm going to enjoy my weekend as well. Thanks, Todd, for being here and doing some moderating. Thanks, Sean from Free 99 English for being here and answering some questions in the chat. By the way, if you have not checked out Sean's channel, he also teaches English. He is a fellow Canadian, so maybe give him a visit as well. And if you haven't watched my video from this past Tuesday, you should go watch it. I feel like I'm talking too much now. I should stop. This was fun. Thank you so much. All of you have a great weekend. I'm going to push the button. I'm going to say goodbye, and I'm going to push the stop button now.